Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of TVR. I'm George Binns, and the guest this evening is from Harbor Light Community Partners, Rosa Ordaz. I got it right. And what we want to talk about tonight is housing that is affordable. And the big difference I think we need to emphasize is Beverly is a very expensive city to buy property in, and housing included. And Beverly has been doing a very good job meeting the state's requirements for affordable housing, which is based on a formula that ties to the median income. And the median income, Beverly's, it's about $75,000, I think, isn't it?
It's a little over 80 now.
It's up over 80. Oh, yes. Everybody got a raise. That's great. Well, that's fine, but there's an awful lot of people that work in town that are not making $80,000 a year. Mm-hmm. So the issue is, where do they live? And what prompted this particular show was you made a presentation at Beverly Library about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, something, about what's been going on. And from that, there is a video clip that we would like to show. And if the director would turn on the video, we'd appreciate it.
I often wondered what type of people live in affordable housing until I got involved and saw that they're no different. They're professionals, they're ordinary people.
What did you do as kind of a work or profession?
I started out in the actuarial department, John Hancock.
After college, I worked in New York City at a literary magazine.
Just before I was 40, I went back to nursing school.
I spent most of my time in retail.
I went to school nights for 12 years to get my college degree and my master's.
Seems as if I've taught all my adult life.
I like sports.
He was a four-letter guy.
I worked for 3 attorneys. One answered to the mayor and the city council.
Well, I started in real estate when I was quite young. Then I started a band, took all my time, and then I got MS.
Unfortunately, my husband passed away the last year that I was teaching.
I was just graduated high school and I came down with meningitis, meningitis. I was in a coma for
like 3 months.
Yeah, 3 months. So luckily this place opened up for me.
What did you think about affordable housing?
I think we're lucky.
I think they're lucky to have us.
Now, the video we just watched is what?
It is a mix of residents living at our Rockport High School apartments, so that is in Rockport,
Yeah.
and it's a subsidized senior housing property.
Yeah. What's the equivalent in Beverly?
So in Beverly, HCP's home, if you will, has a couple of senior subsidized properties. So we have Harbor Lighthouse, which is right by the ocean over close to Dane Street Beach, and that has wraparound medical services and a lot of support for frail seniors. And we've also got Turtle Creek and Turtle Woods, which are the First Baptist Church, our original founder, kind of their first properties into affordable housing.
So it sounds like the First Baptist Church got into this affordable housing that is affordable, and it sort of morphed into a bigger operation, more than just local Beverly. It's now the Harbor Light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so First Baptist Church made the decision to purchase and develop affordable senior housing. It started in Beverly, like you said, and couple decades later, HCP was formed as almost like a subsidiary or a nonprofit organization of First Baptist Church. And so now we operate in 11 communities in the North Shore, and we have over close to 500 apartments.
Okay.
And we've got about 470 in the pipeline.
Good. What's the latest one you're building?
Let's see. We've got Anchor Point, which is in Beverly. So that is our first family development. So we're really excited about that. It's going to be 77 apartments, 2 and 3 bedrooms, all subsidized. 15% of those set aside for homeless families. So it's being built in 2 phases. So phase 1 will have 8 of the 36 units that are being built set aside for homeless, and the second phase will have the rest. So we've got that just down the road here, and it's construction. 3rd floor is up. If anybody wants to drive by, they can see that any day.
Yeah. What's the other one you mentioned?
Granite Street Crossing is in Rockport, so that is intergenerational. It also has a couple homeless units set aside, so I think it's 3 out of the 23. And we've got some subsidized senior apartments there and some family apartments as well.
How do you decide who can get into one of these places?
So it's all based on fair housing and a lottery and a tenant selection plan that is approved by the state. If not all, actually, all of our developments have a local preference initially upon move-in, but it's a very strict game as to, who is eligible and who is not. And of course, the largest indicator is income and assets.
Yeah. Well, I guess the reason for this game, as you say, play, that there's more people that have a need than apartments that are available or houses that are available.
Yep, there are. We
So
have
I-
600 names on our wait list right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you've got 500 units. That doesn't quite add up, but anyway, and the units are already filled, so really you're talking about 1,100, 1,200 people that are in need, and you can only service not quite half of them. So I guess the issue comes down to one of this community, Beverly in particular, and the surrounding Essex County, and it needs more space available for people. And I guess the issue comes down to, how do you develop this space?
It's a good question. I think it depends. Here in Massachusetts, every city and town gets to put in local policy that allows a certain type of development. There is some guidance from the state. Some of that is presenting a lot of great opportunity coming up. But at every kind of city and town level, things like inclusionary zoning, things like 40R, and land that is available for purchase at a lower cost play a really big role in that.
Well, what's inclusionary?
Inclusionary zoning incentivizes or requires developers, anytime they build any housing at all, that a portion of that is offered at an affordable rate. So Beverly, for example, has inclusionary zoning in place.
So that's the 12% of every project has to be affordable housing by the state definition.
Right. It's 10%, and some
The
cities
state
choose to go
requirement is
higher.
10%.
Yes.
Beverly's doing better than that. Yeah.
Yep. And some cities and towns can go up, like you said, like Beverly being one of those examples.
And I guess that still doesn't answer the real problem that you're addressing with the 600 people on a waiting list. Is there anything the state is doing besides guidance? I mean, is there any money coming along that can, behind this guidance, that you can actually buy properties and convert them into housing that is affordable?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. Kind of the one that's been in existence already is in funding rounds by DHCD, right? So any developer can submit a proposal for affordable or non-affordable developments. and you submit an application depending on what that development looks like, dictates what round you submit for. But I would say like the most exciting thing that I think we should talk about are two things. So the governor signed a $600 million ARPA funds bill recently, passed by the legislature a couple days ago, maybe a week ago. And in that is included funding for housing. I'm sorry, $4 billion, and $600 million of that is for housing development. And so within that, there's production, and there are also funding streams for certain first-time homebuyer programs and initiatives like that that we're really excited about. It's kind of like, COVID, the pandemic has been very extremely difficult. I don't think any of us would want to live through that again, but it has provided an opportunity for this kind of once-in-a-lifetime funds, and that's at the state level. And then at the local level, each city and town is getting, a certain percentage, and that where those funds go and how they're spent is dictated by the local government. So policy, city council, things like that. And every city and town is doing it a little bit differently. There's also within the governor's housing choice bill, which was passed at the beginning of 2021, I think. It all gets a little fuzzy, COVID. But within that, there is an MBTA piece that is really exciting, because what it does is it requires every MBTA community, which the North Shore is composed of, right? Beverly being one of them, with 4 MBTA stations, rails, to designate an area of half a mile within transit as developed multifamily by right. So once that's dictated kind of at every municipality, that kind of changes the zoning a little bit and provides a little bit of opportunity. The affordable piece is going to be key there. So what cities and towns determine as affordable within that zone will be really interesting to watch.
So it's no longer just the state formula based on the median income of $80,000 a year. It's the city can create their own definition of affordable?
They can. I think it gets a little difficult, right? Because you want to be able to create multifamily housing. We're talking about the MBTA area. Yep. So you want to be able to create multifamily housing, and some cities have the tools to be able to create more of it than some towns that might be a little bit smaller.
What do you mean by the tools?
So if you have, for example, if you have an area that requires a lot of blasting, right? Or if you have other kind of site challenges like that are designated as the zone to be developed, that's going to be more expensive and more difficult for a developer as opposed to something that's already kind of ready to go.
Well, you think about Beverly and its 4 stations. There's a lot of work being done around the downtown railroad station. And I think there's one more project that's going up somewhere along the Bass River. And this is pretty much tied into affordable housing by definition. And this is the other thing that bothers me, is that it's one thing to talk about TOD, transient-oriented development. You're really trying to attract people from Boston to live in the North Shore. Fine. And they will probably come with the money to buy some of these places. But once you get out of the range of this half mile, there's still a need for people who work in Beverly. They're not making minimum wage or much more than minimum wage. So how does that factor into the definition of what happens in this zone?
I think that's a very good point, but I think it's also kind of a separate issue, because the housing choice legislation does only cover that half a mile radius. So I would say for a city like Beverly that has a lot of the right policies already in place, you look at the city and say, well, what else can we do, right? And so I know that the city is currently has a steering committee, for example, to look at the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, and hoping to update it and make it a little bit more attainable to more people. So I think the example that you just gave of someone making minimum wage, or a young family just kind of starting out, or maybe a senior, or even a couple that needs to downsize and doesn't have a lot of options. An accessory dwelling unit is something that the city could consider as a way to diversify that housing stock, because the city can require that they are subsidized, so below market rent. And they also tend to be a little bit more affordable just because of their size. So they're not going to be, the square footage of a single family house, for example.
Well, I guess the issue keeps coming back to what can Beverly do? And one way to look at it, if you were the mayor, okay, and you wanted to put in housing for these people who are, as you say, new couples just starting out, or seniors who want to downsize, or people that just want to downsize for whatever reason. What can we do in Beverly? What would you do in Beverly?
First, I just want to say, if I was mayor, I'd probably have a lot bigger bags under my eyes. It's a very difficult job, from what I hear. I think it's, Beverly, for the most part, is kind of doing everything right when it comes to an affordable housing perspective as far as policy, right? So we've got inclusionary zoning here. We've got participation in the CPA. We've got this opportunity coming up with the MBTA stations, and we have 4 of them here in Beverly. So I guess I would consider 40R districts, which is what made a development like Anchor Point possible.
What's
right?
a 40R district?
So 40R is an incentive that the city has to pass, and you can pass that to make it a little bit more appealing for a developer. So it can allow for a zoning change. So it can, for example, if you had a commercial or a single family only zone, or a 2-family only zone, you could create it so that it was multi-use. So you could have storefronts, and you could have housing within that same area.
Well, that's Rantoul Street now, essentially.
Rantoul Street does have a lot of development. I moved to the North Shore about 5 years ago, and it looks completely different than it did then. But 40R is one of those ways that we could do that. Beverly already has inclusionary zoning. Some of the most difficult things, I think, when it comes to development is, when you have to abide by very strict setbacks and lot sizes and parking requirements. So if we wanted to increase the housing stock, or make better use of land maybe that's being underutilized, those are some of the considerations that a city could look at.
Well, the other thing that I keep thinking of, and it showed on the video we had at the very end of it, there's this little phrase that shows in there of not in my backyard converted into yes in my backyard. And when we start to talk in the city about Folly Hill, there's a lot of pushback. Well, what are we going to do about the traffic coming through the other neighborhoods?
Sure.
And there's all sorts of reasons that are developed why we can't develop this particular property as that way. And I think Harbor Light has run into this problem with some of the properties they've developed in the North Shore. What do you think we can do to make people more comfortable with this kind of housing?
I think listening to a community is really important, right? So we all have concerns and kind of opinions and desires of what we want our neighborhoods to look like. So that is important. And, when Harbor Light looks at any sort of potential development anywhere and it starts to get a little serious, that's definitely something we want to do. We want to hear from neighbors and community leaders and business owners and all of that. So I think that's really important. As far as like how to make housing that's affordable more appealing to people that might have other concerns, I think, like the clip that you showed earlier is a really good way to kind of start that conversation. what do they think about when they hear affordable housing? There is still a negative connotation associated with that. And I think, telling stories works a lot better than talking about facts. So one of the things that we like to do is demonstrate who lives in affordable housing and the reasons that they need to live in affordable housing. We're all kind of one lifetime decision away or one event away from needing that, medical reasons, employment reasons, family size reasons. We could all need affordable housing tomorrow. And I think talking about that is really important, and showing the communities that we want to operate in what our properties look like. We're really proud of the properties that we operate. We put a lot of thought and care into the design, and we want it to fit into the community, into the landscape that's already there. And we want to provide services for the community at large, but also for our residents. It's not easy for them either, moving into a new community. It's not easy for any of us moving into a new place. So I think all of those things are really important. And then we're always happy to talk policy and, kind of the numbers behind it and the zoning behind it. But some people kind of, start to glaze over a little bit if you get into that too quick. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's a real problem, I think. And there's been a lot of spectacular disasters in the affordable housing business. Igor Prue and a few of those other ones, that they actually tore them down after 10, 20 years. And one of the issues that keeps coming up with a lot of these places is maintenance. Mm-hmm. And because they were operated by the city government or the state government, maintenance got sloughed off.
Sure.
And the buildings deteriorated and didn't get repaired. And it seemed to have an attitude shift, or cause an attitude shift in the residents that, hey, if nobody else cares, why should I?
Right.
And you can see this kind of spiraling down. And I think Columbia Point is another example of that, where the city was running it and it started to deteriorate, and their solution was to sell it to a private developer. And from what I hear, I'm not sure if I got the latest and greatest, but from what I hear, Columbia Point is recovering as a reasonably good place to live. So I guess when you talk about Harbor Light as getting involved in these things, developing these things, how long do you stay in the game? I mean, are you there as long as the building is there?
We are, yeah.
Or does the city take it over? Or how is that split between?
Yeah. No, that's a great question, and I think an important one. So Harbor Light is a community development corporation, or CDC. So we are separate from, for example, a housing authority that is getting funds from the state. Yeah. And what that does is it allows for Harbor Light to really have a lot more oversight and control over our properties. So one of the things that I think is unique to our organization is that we do manage all of our properties. We operate resident services, and we have our own maintenance team. And granted, we are still a relatively small nonprofit-ish. We have big goals, right? But that is one of the reasons we do that, is because we want to be able to provide quality housing and really be a good, solid member of the communities that we operate in.
Does Harbor Light actually own these properties?
We do.
Okay, so you're responsible for everything.
Yes, we do manage or support other joint properties through joint ventures that we do not own, but the majority of our properties that are up now, we do own.
And early on in the discussion, you were talking about some of the other services that you provide besides just, here's the building, and go in there and live, kind of thing.
Yep.
Could you elaborate on that again, because I missed something?
Yeah, absolutely. So it varies kind of depending on the structure of the deal, within the building. But it also mainly varies because of the population that is living within the property. So, for example, at Harbor Light House, we do not provide any of the medical care, and I don't think anybody would want us to. You know, we're not medical professionals, but we have great partners such as like PACE, Element Care, and Associated Home Care that provide a lot of that to our residents 24 hours a day. And then we have other properties that have dedicated service coordinators. And what they do is, first and foremost, they make sure that every resident in that property has had an opportunity to enroll in health insurance, to make sure that they have access to food, transportation, whatever that might be, and you know, some social opportunities and well-being, wellness type of stuff. The last thing I'll mention, because we are focusing a lot more future projects on developing family housing and specifically homeless populations, those services are going to look very different. So at Boston Street Crossing in Salem, we partner with LifeBridge and provide case management and support for those residents that were formerly homeless. Looks very different than you would need at a senior property.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so believe it or not, we've had a half hour of fun.
Wow, that went so fast.
Yeah. So I guess, what did I forget to ask you? Anything?
No, I would just say, no, I think you did a great job, but I would just say that we are just really excited to continue our work in Essex County. So.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And if you have any issues that you want to bring up at the end of the show, you'll notice in the credits, there's an opportunity for you to come join us at the table, and would like to hear from you. And again, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and your insight is very good. I appreciate it. Thank you. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Talk to you next time.